Hello everyone! Today I'm going to talk about the 1996 television adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma, which stars Kate Beckinsale as Emma Woodhouse with Mark Strong as Mr. Knightley. It's available to watch free with ads on YouTube, it's on Tubi, it's on Prime, it's lots of places. There were two Emmas released in 1996. The other, which I have already done a video on, starred Gwyneth Paltrow and debuted theatrically in August. This premiered in November on ITV in the UK, and then aired on A&E in the US the following February, which leads some sources to call it the 97 version. That does help with differentiating the two, however, they were both made in 96. Because they came out so close together, they're often pitted against one another like they're in competition, and things can get kinda nasty, and I think that's too bad. It would be nice if people could just say, great, we got two versions of Emma to enjoy in 1 year, and then judge each on an individual basis. I'm not saying you have to love them both, you don't even have to like them both, but you can talk about one without tearing down the other. Now, of the 5 major Emma adaptations, 1972, 1996, 2009, and 2020, this is possibly my least favorite, but when I say that, that doesn't mean I dislike it. I like all of them for different reasons to varying degrees, and I like this one just fine. When I consider them all, though, I have a little less fondness for this one than for some others. The screenplay was written by Andrew Davies, hot on the heels of his mega-successful Pride and Prejudice adaptation for the BBC. I already did a video on that one, too. I think I might be wearing this sweater in that video, I'm not sure. I never knew this until a few days ago, but the BBC had already hired screenwriter Sandy Welch to make an Emma when Davies approached them with his idea. So he turned around and went to their rival, ITV, and made a deal with them. And the Pride and Prejudice crew jumped ship to work on his Emma project instead. Scandalous. Unlike his 5-hour, 6-episode Pride and Prejudice adaptation, his Emma runs under 2 hours. That's curious, since Emma is the longer novel. Incidentally, Sandy Welch and the BBC did eventually make their Emma in 2009, and it's a 4-hour miniseries. I've seen it a couple times, I haven't done a full review of it yet. Years ago, I did talk about it a little bit in a video, but it doesn't count as a review. That will be my last Emma review, maybe this year. I have it, I've got it sitting over there on a shelf, but I don't know, I can't make any promises. Because it's less than 2 hours, this version has to move quickly. One scene leads into the next, and then the next, with few lulls. I was a little shocked when we were only 20 minutes in and already going to Mr. Weston's Christmas party. It is missing some things from the book, but if you tally up what's been omitted, there's nothing of great significance. Mr. Elton's courtship riddle, the Coles party, a couple lines of Mr. Knightley's that always tickle my fancy, they're not here, but the script works without them. The bullet points are all there, and they're faithfully rendered, even at breakneck speed. As for quality, well, it's a TV movie from the 90s. The first few minutes are the roughest. The opening shots are in the dark, and the picture is grainy. Plus, I forgot that this version starts with a scene that makes you say, hold on, wait a minute, is this Emma, or did I click on the wrong movie? It opens with poachers stealing chickens from the hen house. Though this is something that will be recalled later, it's an unusual place to start. The good news is the quality improves in subsequent scenes, and it's generally an attractive-looking movie. The locations are appealing, and the muted pastel color palette of the decor is easy on the eyes and helps the authentic and demure costumes stand out. While there are things that have been cut to condense the story to fit it into the runtime, there are a few things that the adaptation does make time for. One is a series of fanciful interludes where Emma's imagination runs away with her. We get a vision of Harriet marrying Mr. Elton, a dramatic reenactment of Mr. Dixon rescuing Jane Fairfax, Emma's fancy that Frank's portrait comes alive and kisses her hand, a nightmare of Jane and Mr. Knightley getting married and Emma and her nephew protesting, a droll image of Frank riding in and sweeping Harriet up onto his horse. It's an amusing running gag, and it's one of the things that helps this adaptation distinguish itself from the others. It's kind of funny, it shows the inner workings of Emma's meddlesome matchmaking mind, but I'm iffy on the idea. Whenever one of these fantasy sequences shows up, I'm like, oh boy, this is pretty silly. Davies has also given several nods to the servants, who are shown patiently holding candles, taking gloves, unloading luggage, and making all these charming little things that the characters do happen. The Wikipedia page cites some sources that make a big deal out of this, calling it social commentary on class. Yes, but it's not overt commentary, and it's also part of the comic relief. You have Mrs. Elton gushing over how natural it feels to pick her own strawberries while gesturing for the servant to move the pillow she's kneeling on, and you have everyone traveling up to Box Hill, followed by a legion of servants struggling with hampers full of food and dishes. And by the way, the 2020 version kind of stole this whole show the long-suffering servants idea. A third element that's magnified in this version is the relationship between Jane Fairfax and Frank Churchill. In showing us private little looks they share, this version lets us in on their secret. Emma completely misses these signs, so she's in the dark, and while smiling at Harriet and Mr. Knightley talking, and missing Harriet's feelings, she also misses Frank meeting Jane in the background. I like the hints at the connection and the warmth between them, and later I think it helps us feel better about their relationship going forward. Most Emma adaptations are lacking on that front. The performances are all very good, as far as I know, and I have seen all 5 of the major adaptations. Kate Beckinsale is the only brunette Emma Woodhouse that we've had on film. Jane Austen did not specify the color of her hair, but for some reason everybody else made her a blonde, so it's nice to see something different. Beckinsale's Emma is very arch, very sassy with Mr. Knightley. She does look awfully cross sometimes in the middle section, in keeping with the conflict, and when she's showing her disdain, her boredom, her snobbishness, she can be pretty sour-looking, but she has some subtle expressions and amusing reactions to people like the Eltons, which I find more rewarding with each viewing. Mark Strong's take on Mr. Knightley is very direct with his observations and chastisements. I like that he's shown to be a keen observer, quick to catch on to things, and he's got a couple humorous moments, like his outrage when he hears Frank's reason for going into town.
To get his hair cut?
However, I do wish his characterization was a little warmer. I know some people are big fans of Mark Strong. I have found him more attractive in other things. He often looks so stern here, and I wish his expression softened more. We see less of Emma and Knightley hanging out together and enjoying each other's company, and that disappoints me. I can see their chemistry. In fact, I felt they were pretty flirty right off the bat. But friendly, familiar moments between them are on the scanty side, probably because this shorter adaptation doesn't have the time, or chooses to spend that time on other things, like those fantasy sequences. I like the bit where Emma teases him about using a carriage like a gentleman, and I wish there was more of that, and more of Mr. Knightley in general. In a longer version, you get more group scenes, thus glimpses of him in the background interacting with various individuals, which helps inform you more about his character. He's just not in this version as much. Mr. Woodhouse, Emma's hypochondriac father, is played by veteran TV star Bernard Hepton as a fearful but lovable man who I think just really needs a hug. I like that Emma's interactions with him are genuinely sweet, never annoyed or impatient. Harriet Smith is played by a young Samantha Morton, who fits Austen's description of the character almost perfectly. She is sweet, meek, quick to love, and quick to be influenced. In the moment after Emma's gotten her to refuse Robert Martin when she says, "Now I'm secure of you forever," the bereft look on Harriet's face is fleeting, but it speaks volumes. Mr. Elton I kept changing my mind about. At first I thought he wasn't unctuous and toadying enough. For a character who is typically played up for laughs, he seemed too normal, although his attention to Emma couldn't be more obvious. However, because he's not a complete caricature, he feels more like a real person. And that's not to say he isn't ridiculous, like when he's guzzling the wine at dinner and making eyes at Emma. Miss Bates isn't featured as prominently here as in other versions, which surprises me, but Prunella Scales nails the run-on sentences, and this Miss Bates is a very sympathetic figure. Once he finally makes his entrance, I think this is one of the more likable Frank Churchills, less rascally, less irritable when things aren't going his way, still too flirty, but that's the character. I associate this actor with the adaptation of Anthony Trollope's He Knew He Was Right, which I reviewed a few years ago, where he meets a couple American ladies and they talk about mayonnaise. They talk about more than that, but it's the mayonnaise that sticks with me because of how he says it. So, every time I see him, I think, mayonnaise. It's when Frank tells Emma that Jane Fairfax looked very ill that I was reminded, oh yeah, I kinda hate this guy. It's such an unnecessary comment. If he wanted to keep his cover, he could have just said, she looked well, with indifference. There was no need to be cruel and insulting. Ugh, what a jerk. Don't get me started. Jane Fairfax is played by Olivia Williams, who I think gives my favorite portrayal of the character. She looks lovely, for one thing, but she also brings more depth to the character. She is reserved, but not standoffish, cold, or unapproachable, and only gradually becomes miserable as Frank's ruse of a flirtation with Emma makes her doubtful and uncomfortable. I appreciate that they included Emma coming to feel sorry for Jane, Frank's slip-up about Perry's carriage, the anagrams, the lover's tiff, and I like that they went out of their way to show Jane's quiet, self-conscious happiness at the end of the story, with Frank being more palatable all around and evidence showing they really are besotted with each other, paired with the secret glances they've been sharing all along. I have higher hopes for this couple than usual. Mrs. Elton is played by Lucy Robinson, who the previous year played Mrs. Hurst in Pride and Prejudice. I enjoy her interpretation of Mrs. Elton. She does seem to be using a different accent here. It's more exaggerated, and I find it distracting, but she has some excellent comical reactions.
I fancy myself as a sort of shepherdess, you know.
Oh, are you fond of sheep then, Mrs. Elton?
And John Knightley. I recognized him, I recognized his voice, and I spent the whole movie trying to figure out where I knew him from. And then right at the end, when we see him again, I was like, wait! Did he play Mr. Collins in Lost in Austin? And he did. And I was like, oh, got it. But also, I looked him up after. He, Guy Henry, the actor, is most known for playing Grand Moff Tarkin, or doing motion capture for Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One. While George Knightley is my favorite Austen hero, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for his cranky brother John, and I love his dry speech about having to drive through the snow to another man's house for a party when they would be better off staying home. Both of the actors playing the Knightley brothers here have great voices, and as I was thinking about this, it occurred to me that I could see the actors trading places. Guy Henry playing Mr. Knightley, Mark Strong playing John. It would never happen, but it was interesting to consider. I can hear Guy Henry doing a good job with Mr. Knightley's lines, I can hear Mark Strong doing a good job with John's lines. Before I wrap this up, I'd like to shout out a few specific moments that jumped at me. When Emma thinks Frank might be on the verge of proposing to her, this is a moment where some adaptations show her intrigued or a little excited about what's coming, but I like that here her face and posture suggest she's thinking, ooh, is he? Ooh, I'm not sure I want that. When everyone's gathered at Donwell Abbey to pick strawberries, I like that Emma and Mr. Knightley share a couple quick looks at Mrs. Elton's expense. Yes, more of this, please! The Box Hill scene, ugh, my favorite part. Beckinsale does very well with Emma's discomfort, even in the lead-up to her saying the thing. Then she says it, and I noticed that Frank snickers, shame on him, but everybody else is immediately dismayed, and then Frank and Jane make some telling comments aimed at each other, which no one but Mr. Knightley picks up on. Later, there's a shot of Jane walking through a field sobbing, and this is witnessed by Robert Martin. So we have two unhappy strangers who've both been wounded, directly or indirectly, by Emma's actions. The proposal scene between Emma and Mr. Knightley, not one of my favorites. I like how this version makes it clear that he heard the news about the engagement and hopped on his horse and rushed back to comfort Emma. But, oof, there are a couple challenging lines of dialogue here. Austen didn't write out everything the characters say in their first romantic moment. So Davies, like every other Emma screenwriter, had to make things up to fill the gap. Overall, it's fine, and there's nothing outrageous. There's no random nosebleed. But it gets a little clunky.
I held you in my arms when you were 3 weeks old.
Ooh, not during the proposal. We don't want to be reminded of that right now. Remember the poachers from the beginning? As in the book, Emma uses her father's fear of them to convince him it's a good thing for her to get married and for Mr. Knightley to move into Hartfield with them. Then Mr. Knightley hosts a harvest feast / engagement banquet? I'm not sure what it is, but it's a rustic, provincial affair, and the Eltons are appalled to see all his tenants in attendance. I like that Emma makes good by letting Harriet officially introduce her to Robert Martin. It's one of the biggest displays of Emma's growth. And then Emma and Mr. Knightley dance again after repeating the lines they said earlier about not being brother and sister, except that they've swapped who says what, which is clever, but strange. It's like this version is determined to give us a squicky feeling about their relationship, instead of helping us overlook the things that aren't as acceptable now as they were in Austen's day. Come on, Andrew Davies, what are you doing? And it ends with the chicken thieves breaking into the coop outside, which I think is supposed to be funny. I've never been sure how I was supposed to take that. Based on the range of my comments here, you might infer that this version's kind of a mixed bag for me, and that's true to a certain extent, but no more than any other adaptation of Emma. I love the book, so I am probably inclined to be nitpicky, and I'm gonna have a lot to say about every version. Here, there are things I like a lot, there are things that are different, but they grow on me, and there are some things that I don't like as much. But taken as a whole, I think it's a very good adaptation, and perhaps its greatest strength is that it smoothly adapts the entirety of Austen's novel in a short amount of time, with a consistent tone and a minimal number of deviations. And that's what I think about the 1996 television adaptation of Emma. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on this version. I would love to hear yours if you have seen it, so feel free to share in the comments below, and I will be back next week. Thanks for watching.